Her name was Nikita. And from the moment I saw her, laughing as she tried to rescue a stray kitten from a rain-soaked alley behind the coffee shop where I worked, I knew my life was about to change. She had eyes the color of dark honey and a spirit that was both fierce and gentle. I, Alex, was a simple barista with a secret so vast, it had become a part of my shadow. For 2 years, we built a beautiful, honest life together. Well, as honest as it could be, built on a single, foundational lie. My parents are traditional, Nikita had warned me early on, her fingers laced with mine. They're old money, from Moscow. They have expectations. About who I should be with. What kind of expectations? I'd asked, my heart sinking. A lawyer. A doctor. A CEO. Someone with a lineage. Not, she gestured vaguely at my apron, stained with espresso. Not a creative type. So, we crafted a persona. Alex, the freelance graphic designer. It was close enough to the truth to feel real, but polished enough to be acceptable. I had an online portfolio, a professional website, and a carefully curated story about working remotely for international clients. It was a comfortable, believable fiction. The truth was, I wasn't just Alex the barista. I was Alexander Volkov, only son and heir to the Volkov fortune, a global empire in tech and manufacturing that made Nikita's family's old money look like pocket change. My father, a titan of industry, believed in earning your stripes. At 21, he'd given me a small trust fund, a new identity, and a mandate: go be nobody. Learn the value of $1. Come back when you're ready to be somebody. For 5 years, I'd been nobody. And I'd loved it. I loved the simplicity, the anonymity, the genuine connections. I loved Nikita for loving the man she thought I was. But the clock was ticking. My 5 years were up in a month. The barista life was about to end. Then, Nikita came to me, her face alight with a nervous excitement. They want to meet you. My parents. They're flying in from Moscow next week. They've invited us to dinner at their townhouse. The air left my lungs. This was it. The moment the lie would be tested in the crucible of their scrutiny. Alex, are you okay? She asked, touching my arm. You look pale. I'm just nervous, I managed to say, forcing a smile. I want them to like me. They will, she said, her faith in me absolute. Just be yourself. Yourself. The word was a knife. Which self? The barista? The graphic designer? The billionaire's son? The day of the dinner arrived. I dressed carefully in the one good suit I owned, a mid-range, off-the-rack number I'd bought for a friend's wedding. I looked presentable. Respectable. Like a successful freelance graphic designer. Nikita held my hand tightly as we stood before the imposing, black-painted door of a brownstone in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city. Ready, she whispered. As I'll ever be, I said, my throat dry. She rang the bell. The door was opened by a stern-faced woman in a severe black dress, a housekeeper. She ushered us into a foyer that was more of a gallery. Marble floors, a crystal chandelier, and austere, modern art on the walls that I recognized from Sotheby's auctions. The air smelled of lemon polish and old money. Nikita. My darling. A woman emerged from a doorway. Irina, Nikita's mother. She was elegant, sharp-boned, and dressed in a sheath of cream silk. She embraced Nikita, her eyes, the same honey color but much colder, scanning me over her daughter's shoulder. And you must be Alex, she said, releasing Nikita and offering me a hand with deadfish coolness. Nikita has told us so much about you. The way she said much implied it was all disappointingly little. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Orlov, I said, shaking her hand. Please, call me Irina. Come, Dmitri is in the drawing room. The drawing room. Of course. We followed her into a space that was all low-slung, minimalist furniture and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a private garden. A man stood with his back to us, staring out at the twilight. He turned slowly. Dmitri Orlov. Nikita's father. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a head of silver hair and a gaze that felt like it could strip paint. He didn't smile. Papa, this is Alex, Nikita said, her voice slightly tremulous. Dmitri Orlov walked toward me, his steps measured. He didn't offer his hand. He just looked me up and down, his expression unreadable. Alex, he repeated, as if tasting the name and finding it bland. Nikita says you are a designer. Yes, sir. Freelance graphic design. Humph, the sound was a verdict. An unstable business. All pixels and dreams. No foundation. Papa. Nikita protested. It is a simple observation, he said, his eyes still locked on me. A man should build something solid. Something that lasts. Not just pretty pictures. I felt the heat rise to my face. The barista in me wanted to shrink. The Volkov in me wanted to laugh in his face. I did neither. I just stood my ground. I believe a strong brand is the foundation of any modern business, I said, my voice calm. He almost smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. Spoken like a true dreamer. Come. Let us eat. The food is getting cold. He led the way into a dining room dominated by a table that could seat 20. We sat at one end, the vast, polished expanse of empty mahogany between us feeling like a physical manifestation of the gap in our worlds. The first course was served. A delicate consommé. The conversation was stilted, prying. Irina asked about my family. My parents passed away when I was young, I said. Which was the cover story. I was raised by an uncle. A technically true but massively misleading statement. I see, Irina said, her tone suggesting she saw a great deal, and none of it was good. No siblings? No. It's just me. How uncomplicated, she remarked, taking a sip of wine. The main course arrived, filet mignon. As the plates were set down, Dmitri fixed me with that piercing gaze again. So, Alex. What are your intentions with my daughter? This freelance life, it does not provide much security for a future. For a family. This was the inquisition I had dreaded. I took a breath, ready to defend my fictional career, to promise a future built on my own two hands. But I never got the chance. The door to the dining room swung open. Not the housekeeper. A man. Tall, impeccably dressed in a Brioni suit, with a familiar, hawk-like face and an air of absolute authority. My father's most trusted advisor, Mr. Petrov. My blood ran cold. The world tilted on its axis. Mr. Petrov's eyes swept the room, completely ignoring the stunned Orlovs, and landed directly on me. Alexander, he said, his voice cutting through the tense silence like a scalpel. Your father sent me. The 5 years are up. The board is waiting. It's time to stop playing barista and come home. The silence that followed was deafening. The clatter of Nikita's fork hitting her plate was like a gunshot. Irina's mouth was hanging open. Dmitri's face was a frozen mask of confusion, rapidly shifting to dawning, horrified comprehension. Nikita turned to me, her beautiful eyes wide with a betrayal so profound it shattered my heart into a million pieces. Alexander, she whispered. Barista. The lie hadn't just been uncovered. It had been detonated. And in the devastating silence, everything we had built began to fall apart. Time stopped. The elegant dining room, with its fine china and crystal, felt like a stage after the play has ended, the actors frozen in a moment of catastrophic failure. The smell of filet mignon turned sour in my nostrils. Nikita was staring at me, her face a canvas of shattered trust. Alexander, she repeated, the name foreign and terrifying on her lips. What is he talking about? Mr. Petrov remained by the door, a statue of unshakable loyalty to my family, completely unaware he had just thrown a grenade into the heart of my life. Dmitri Orlov was the first to find his voice. It was a low, dangerous rumble. Volkov? He called you Alexander Volkov. The name landed in the room with the weight of an anvil. The Volkov name was a legend in certain circles, the kind of circles the Orlovs desperately wanted to be in. Irina's hand flew to her throat. The Volkovs? Of Volkov Industries? Her eyes, once cold with disdain, were now wide with a frantic, calculating awe. My God. Nikita, I can explain, I began, turning to her, my voice pleading. Explain what? She cried, her voice cracking. That your name isn't Alex? That you're not a graphic designer? That you're some kind of billionaire prince slumming it? The hurt in her eyes was being rapidly eclipsed by a blazing fury. Was this all a game to you? Was I just part of your nobody experience? No. It was never a game. You were the only real thing. Don't, she snapped, pushing her chair back, the legs screeching against the floor. Don't you dare. You lied to me. About everything. Mr. Petrov, sensing the turmoil but misreading its source, took a step forward. Alexander, your father's jet is waiting at Teterboro. There are contracts that require your signature. The Singapore merger cannot proceed without you. Get out, I said to him, my voice trembling with a rage I had never felt before. I beg your pardon? I said, get out. I roared, the sound echoing in the cavernous room. For the first time, Mr. Petrov looked uncertain. He gave a curt nod. I will be in the car. He turned and left, closing the door softly behind him, leaving me in the wreckage. The dynamic in the room had completely inverted. Dmitri was now looking at me not with contempt, but with a kind of stunned, greedy reverence. Irina was practically vibrating with a new, horrifying ambition. Alexander, Dmitri began, his tone now obsequious, oily. This is a most unexpected surprise. Why didn't you say something? We could have avoided this misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Nikita whispered, her voice dripping with venom. He lied to us for 2 years, Papa. There's no misunderstanding. There's only a lie. Now, darling, Irina said, her voice sickly sweet, a complete 180 from her earlier frostiness. I'm sure Alexander had his reasons. A man in his position must be careful. There are so many gold diggers. She was now including her own daughter in that category. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. My reasons, I said, my gaze locked on Nikita, begging her to understand, were to be loved for who I am, not for what my name is worth. With you, I found that. You loved Alex. You never cared about money or status. That was real. Nothing about this was real, she shot back, tears finally streaming down her face. The person I loved doesn't exist. He was a character you played. Did you take notes? Observing the common folk and their quaint little lives. Nikita, that's not fair. Fair? She let out a bitter, broken laugh. You want to talk about fair? I defended you. I fought with them for you. She pointed a trembling finger at her parents. I told them you were brilliant and kind and that your work mattered. And the whole time, you were sitting on a throne, laughing at us. I was never laughing. I was hiding. From this. I gestured wildly at her parents, at their sudden, grotesque shift in demeanor. From the exact look that's on their faces right now. The calculation. The greed. I didn't want to be a transaction. I wanted to be a man. Dmitri cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the situation. Alexander, perhaps we should all take a moment. This is a lot to process. Let's have a drink in my study. I have a 50-year-old Macallan. We can talk business. I'm sure our families could find many synergies. The word synergies made me feel physically ill. He saw my relationship with his daughter as a potential merger. I looked at Nikita. The love of my life was looking at me as if I were a stranger. A dangerous, duplicitous stranger. Nikita, please, I whispered, my own tears threatening to fall. Let me explain everything. Just give me a chance. She shook her head, wrapping her arms around herself as if she were cold. There's nothing to explain. The facts are pretty simple. You're Alexander Volkov. You're rich beyond anything I can imagine. And you lied to me for 2 years. The rest is just details. She turned and walked out of the dining room. I took a step to follow her, but Irina moved to block my path, her expression now one of maternal concern, a performance worthy of an Oscar. Alexander, dear, give her some time. She's just in shock. She'll come around. When she realizes the opportunity, the life you can give her, I stared at her, disgusted. You think this is about the life I can give her? You don't know your daughter at all. I pushed past her, not caring about decorum anymore. I had to find Nikita. I found her in the foyer, putting on her coat. Her movements were quick, jerky, fueled by pain. Nikita, wait. Don't, she said, without looking at me. Just, don't. I need to get out of here. Let me drive you. I'd rather walk, she said, her voice flat and final. She opened the heavy front door and stepped out into the night, not looking back. I stood alone in the opulent foyer, the shattered pieces of my double life lying at my feet. The revenge I had unknowingly enacted on her snobbish parents was complete. I had humiliated them by revealing they had been judging a king. But it was a hollow, poisonous victory. I had won the battle against their prejudice, but I had lost the war for Nikita's heart. The man she loved was gone. And the man I really was, Alexander Volkov, was a stranger she never wanted to meet. The days that followed were a blur of gray despair. I moved out of my small apartment and into the cold, sterile luxury of the Volkov penthouse. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, but all I saw was the ghost of Nikita's hurt expression. My father, a man of few words and even fewer emotions, was waiting for me in the living room the first night. He looked me up and down, his gaze critical. So, your experiment in poverty is over. Mr. Petrov informed me of the theatrical exit. It wasn't an experiment, I said, my voice hollow. I loved her. Love, he repeated, as if it were a mildly interesting scientific term. And you thought the best way to secure it was through deception? A Volkov does not hide. A Volkov commands. I didn't want to command. I wanted to be normal. Normal is a myth for mediocre people, he stated flatly. You are not mediocre. You are my son. It is time to act like it. He handed me a tablet. Your schedule for the next month. Board meetings. Investor presentations. The Singapore merger is your primary focus. Do not disappoint me. He left me there, surrounded by millions of dollars of art and furniture, feeling more alone than I ever had in my tiny apartment. The Orloffs, meanwhile, had launched a campaign of breathtaking audacity. Dmitri called my office line daily, leaving messages about potential partnerships and exploring aligned interests. Irina sent handwritten invitations to charity galas and operas, addressed to Alexander and a guest, as if Nikita were an accessory to be collected. I ignored them all. Their sudden fawning was more repulsive than their initial disdain. But Nikita, she was radio silent. She didn't answer my calls. My texts went unread. She had blocked me on all social media. It was a silence more punishing than any scream. After a week of agony, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to see her. I went to her art studio, a sunlit space in a converted warehouse she shared with other artists. I saw her through the window, standing before a large canvas. She wasn't painting. She was just staring at it, her shoulders slumped, a paintbrush hanging limply from her hand. My heart shattered all over again. I walked in. The bell on the door jingled. She turned, and the moment she saw me, her face shut down. The vibrant, passionate woman I loved was gone, replaced by a guarded, weary stranger. "What are you doing here, Alexander?" The use of my full name was a deliberate wall. "We need to talk, Nikita. Please." "There's nothing to talk about." "There's everything to talk about. I love you." That wasn't a lie. "Wasn't it?" she countered, her eyes flashing. "You built our entire relationship on a lie of omission. The foundation was rotten. Everything that was built on top of it has to come down." "The love was real," I insisted, stepping closer. "The late-night talks, the dreams we shared, the way you supported me when I was struggling. That was all real. I was real with you. My name and my bank account are just details." "Details?" She let out a short, bitter laugh. "They're not details, Alexander. They're the context of your entire life. You let me complain about my parents' pressure, about money, while you had a safety net that could catch a falling planet. You let me feel sorry for you. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is?" I had no answer. I saw it now, from her perspective. My deception hadn't just been about hiding my wealth, it had robbed her of her right to make an informed choice. It had made a fool of her compassion. "I was going to tell you," I said, my voice desperate. "My 5 years were almost up. I was going to explain everything before I had to go back." "But you didn't," she said softly. "You waited until it exploded in our faces. And now my parents see you as their golden ticket. They don't care that you lied. They only care that you're a Volkov. You've turned my family into a joke, and you've turned what we had into something I can't even recognize anymore." Tears welled in her eyes, but she wiped them away angrily. "I need you to leave. And I need you to not contact me again. Nikita, please, leave," she shouted, her voice echoing in the high-ceilinged studio. I left. I walked back to my sterile penthouse, her final word echoing in my mind. The truth had set me free from my father's assignment, but it had cost me the only thing that had ever truly mattered. My revenge on her parents was complete, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. I had used a sledgehammer to kill a fly, and in the process, I had destroyed the beautiful, fragile thing I had been trying to protect. I threw myself into the work my father demanded. The Singapore merger, the board meetings, the endless streams of data. It was a numbing agent. I became the perfect Volkov heir, sharp, decisive, cold. The barista was dead. Long live Alexander. But late at night, in the unbearable silence of the penthouse, I would look at the city lights and think of her. I had wanted a life without the burden of my name. I had gotten my wish. I had learned the value of $1, and the devastating cost of a lie. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I would have given every last dollar, every share, every ounce of the Volkov empire, to go back to that small apartment and hear her call me Alex just one more time. A year passed. The world knew me as Alexander Volkov, the prodigal son who had taken the helm of the empire with a ruthless, quiet efficiency. The Singapore merger was a triumph, lauded on the front page of the Financial Times. My father, for the first time, looked at me with something resembling respect. But I was a ghost in a gilded cage. I dated heiresses and models, empty relationships that were transactions of status and beauty. None of them laughed like Nikita. None of them had eyes that saw through the facade, because now, the facade was all there was. I kept a distant, secret watch on Nikita. She had moved out of her studio and started her own gallery, a fierce, independent space that championed unknown artists. She was thriving, but there was a new steel in her, a protective shell that hadn't been there before. I had done that. The Orloffs, thankfully, had given up their pursuit after I had my lawyer send them a cease and desist letter, threatening legal action for harassment. Their silence was a relief. Then, I received an invitation. The annual Art for Hope Gala. It was the city's most prestigious charity event. And the featured curator this year was Nikita Orloff. My first instinct was to decline. To stay in my fortress of solitude. But something pulled at me. A need for closure. A need to see her one last time, not as a shattered woman in a studio, but as the formidable person she had become. I went alone. The gala was a sea of diamonds and black ties. I moved through the crowd, a silent king, receiving nods and deferential smiles. And then I saw her. She was standing near one of her featured pieces, a dramatic, abstract sculpture. She wore a simple, emerald green dress that made her look like a queen. She was speaking with a group of patrons, her confidence radiant. She was no longer the girl I'd known, she was a force. Our eyes met across the room. The noise of the crowd faded. For a moment, there was no anger, no hurt, just a profound, silent recognition. She excused herself from her group and walked toward me. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Alexander," she said, her voice calm, neutral. "I'm surprised to see you here." "I wanted to see your work," I said, gesturing to the sculpture. "It's incredible. You're incredible." "Thank you." She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the ghost of the old Nikita in her eyes. "You look different." "So do you." A small, sad smile touched her lips. "We both got what we wanted, in a way. You're the powerful Volkov. And I'm free." "Free?" I asked. "Free from the lies. Free from my parents' expectations. Your little bomb, it blew up my life, but it also cleared the land. I had to rebuild from scratch. On my own terms. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was honest." Her words were a mirror held up to my own soul. I had also gotten what I wanted, the power, the respect, the command my father demanded. But it felt empty. "I never wanted to hurt you, Nikita," I said, my voice low. "That was the last thing I ever wanted. I was just a coward who fell in love and was too terrified to tell the truth." She was silent for a long moment, studying my face. The anger was gone. In its place was a weary understanding. "I know," she finally said. "After the dust settled, I realized that. You weren't malicious. You were just lost. Trying to find a version of yourself that wasn't defined by your name. I can understand that." The forgiveness in her words was so unexpected it stole my breath. "I miss you," I whispered, the confession torn from a place deep inside me I had locked away. "I miss Alex. I miss us." Tears glistened in her eyes. "I miss him, too. But he's gone, Alexander. That life is gone. We can't go back." "What if we could go forward?" I asked, a desperate hope igniting in my chest. Not as Alex the barista and Nikita the artist. But as Alexander and Nikita. With no lies. Just the truth, as messy as it is. She looked at me, and I saw the war in her eyes, the memory of the pain against the memory of the love. "I don't know," she said softly. "The trust, it's like a shattered vase. You can glue the pieces back together, but the cracks will always be there. You'll always see them. Then we'll fill the cracks with gold," I said, quoting a line from a poem we both loved. Kintsugi. The art of embracing damage. It becomes part of the history, and it makes the object more beautiful. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. She didn't answer. She just reached out and gently straightened my tie, a small, intimate gesture that held the weight of our entire past. "The gala is almost over," she said. "I have duties." I nodded, my heart aching. "Of course." She turned to walk away, then paused. She looked back at me. "The truth fell apart once, Alexander," she said. Maybe it's brave to try and build something with the pieces." She didn't wait for a reply. She walked back into the crowd, leaving me standing there, surrounded by a fortune that meant nothing, holding onto the most valuable thing she had given me in a year, a sliver of hope. The silent revenge was over. The revenge on her parents had been swift and brutal. The revenge on myself had been a year of penance. Now, it was time for something much harder, and much more beautiful. It was time for a silent redemption. A chance to build something new, not on a lie, but on the broken, beautiful truth of who we were. The most dangerous lie is the one we tell to those we love, for it doesn't just hide the truth, it destroys the foundation of trust. And the hardest revenge to live with is the one you accidentally inflict on yourself. But sometimes, in the rubble of what falls apart, we find the courage to build something stronger, more beautiful, and truly our own. This has been Silent Revenge.